All right, boys. Hope everyone had a great week. Talk to me about some dad wins and fails that we've had.
Had a fail at our house.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Memorial Day was over the weekend.
Uh-huh.
It was a great day.
Thank you for all those who served, by the way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Thank you for the
shout out.
veterans. Yeah.
Shout out. So we had a great. It was really nice up here, right? The weather wise was great. We did a family fun run in the morning, which was awesome. We went to the Metro Parks and did like a little 5K. Some of the kids biked and rollerbladed or whatever. Cleaned out the garage. We went to a Memorial Day party. Everything was going well, man.
Yeah.
And then my 2-year-old, who's potty training right now, we get back from this event. The two little ones are taking baths together, right? 4-year-old and 2-year-old. All of a sudden, I hear code red. Need help in the bathtub immediately. So my 2-year-old decided to the dreaded tub deuce.
Gotta get the strainer.
Was it a
Gotta get
floater?
the strainer out.
It was. She was so proud of herself. It was.
Was it like a big log?
It was bad.
It was
yeah.
bad.
And so we had to do a quick extraction, right?
Yeah.
Of the other kid. My wife's like, "Get it, come here." Grab that kid. I'm running through the house to put her in the other shower so we could rinse off.
I don't know about you guys. My wife is so good in that situation. I freeze in that situation.
My wife was.
with the
I'm
floater.
thankful she was running point, man. Shout out to my wife because she was running point on that. She had everything under control. She had a plan. You know what I mean? So I was running support, but yeah.
Because we have so many kids, it's like it's pretty much fend for yourself. If a kid has done that in our house, we're like, yeah, whatever. But it's funny because I grew up in a household where there was cloth diapers.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, cloth diaper means everything sits there and you gotta, like, manually do it. So I would get, to make money as a kid, my mom would pay me 5 cents to, like, empty out the diaper.
Wow.
Washboard scrub it, right?
Yeah.
Wash them, dry them, and fold
gosh.
them. And I got
Wow.
5 cents a diaper on it.
Wow.
So, like, the whole, like, kid
Yeah,
poops,
yeah,
it
you're
literally doesn't even phase me.
Doesn't phase you at all.
My grandma would be like, "No, you wash it in the toilet first." And she'd like show it was. I grew up in the weird, like I did not grow up Amish, but as close to Amish as you could imagine, living in a
Churning
suburb. No, we're not getting into the churning butter. I personally didn't, but you know my older brother Joe, he churned butter a little bit. And you gotta remember, we lived in like suburbia, dude. Like they were like the guy next door to us. We lived on like 1/4 acre lots or whatever, 1/8 acre lots. The guy next door was like the furnace repairman, the butcher across the street. It was like super surbia. And there's George there's Joe with his bonnet churning butter in the front.
I feel like we need to get into your childhood. at
We
one
don't
point.
need to do that.
That'll be fun.
You need to be licensed to do that.
I think I've solved parenting. I have actually solved parenting. So remember last week I told you my dad win was I took my eldest to go play golf. For a couple days.
You
Remember that win?
hit a couple holes.
Yeah, a couple of holes, right? This week, unprompted, she asked me to go again.
Real. So she was dreaming about it.
She was
told you.
dreaming about it. And I thought I was in a fever dream when she said, "Can we go?" Because, and then, we actually played 4 holes this time instead of 3. Then we went to Starbucks after. We got like a nice little daddy-daughter drink and a treat. Then we went to the park right after. And we were at the house for like 5-6 hours.
That's
it was
awesome, man.
Awesome. So honestly, dad hack, try and get your kids like into some form of sport that you enjoy as well, because it will pay off. Pay off
great.
dividends.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, look, let's jump into this week's topic. So it's all about dad tone, something we touched on last week. So I'll kick it off with a question. What is dad tone, and is it learned or inherited? Who wants to kick off?
Yeah, I'll
What
kick
do
it
you
off.
got, Matt?
It's got to be inherited, right? I feel like the dad tone gets passed down from generation to generation. You get yelled at by your dad or talked to by your dad, and and then it eventually just comes out of you.
Yeah.
I feel like dad tone is like dad jokes. Like you're not born with it, but the minute like your wife gives birth, it's like the Lord puts like this like electric bolt through you, and suddenly like that's all it becomes. And I don't know if this is like inherited, because I was thinking of this question. I was trying to think of my dad's tone. I don't remember him having a specific tone. Do you guys remember your dad's having like a tone?
Oh yeah, I mean you guys both know my dad.
I know your dad. Yeah,
My dad has a tone. My dad has got a way about him, and it absolutely. And it's funny because I'll say things now that my dad would say to me growing up.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh gosh, why did I just say that?
Exactly.
Because it's in there somewhere of like, hey, when this thing happens, this is the way you respond. Especially when you have like you know, a kid does something dumb and they're older,
Yeah.
and you're just like, and you get angry with them. But what I find funny is like, do all kids emulate their dad the same when they're like telling a story about their dad with tone, right? Like, and dad's like, okay, da 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 da, and it's like, I don't sound like a moron, like a giant. I sound like a normal human being.
So you want to hear a funny story? So I think it was on Saturday or Sunday this weekend that went by, and my one kid was like just being like a terror in the pantry, and at one point I was like, get away from the pasta, and she goes, it's not pasta, it's pasta, Dad. And the whole house just like burst out laughing. But the comment that you made about like mirroring tone and all those things. So I pulled out some stats actually. Kids with emotionally responsive fathers tend to mirror their tone habits by age 6.
So emotionally responsive, does that mean like explosive? Or...
ultimately how you speak to your children gets mirrored back to you.
Okay, by the age of 6.
Typically by the age of 6. But
I'd buy that.
I feel like you see that when you have multiple kids and you see that one of your older kids talking to your younger kid who's
that's a good point. Yeah,
that's a good
right.
Point.
They just pick it up, like they start saying, and you're like, why are you saying that?
And
That's what I say.
Or you look at your wife, you're like, I don't know where she picked it up from.
My wife looks at me and goes, see where he picked it up from?
But you know what's crazy? So kind of sticking on that vein. So infants as young as 7 months can detect emotional tone in adult voices and distinguish between anger and happiness.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
And repeated exposure to harsh tone of voice, even without yelling, has been linked to increased activity in the fear center and decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex, aka decision making.
That's probably why the more kids you have, the less like fearful they are of you, if that makes sense. Just because they're kind of like, whatever. Like you kind of get like as a parent, like if you look at families that have like whatever firstborn to lastborn, everyone's always like, oh, the lastborn had it so easy, or they don't have the same. I think parents soften over time. Number one, and so I think that's true. Where like the kid doesn't have that sort of like fear mechanism built in as much because you're not being as stressful as you have more kids.
Well, speaking of the fear mechanism, this is where it gets kind of interesting. So these are studies done by the Psychology Journal. So a 2020 analysis found that a warm and consistent tone from fathers in particular was a strong indicator and predictor of secure attachment. And kids are twice as likely to open up about emotional struggles when a parent uses a supportive or questioning tone rather than a corrective one.
That
What's
lines
your
up.
feedback on that?
That lines up. It's the response from me typically is because I'm already frustrated about something. When then I see something else that makes me more frustrated. So then it's
usually something that isn't worth getting frustrated about, but it's the cumulative frustration build-up.
I don't like Andrew. You could talk to this with boys, but like with girls, you just see their face change, and you're just instantly like, oh, what did I do?
It's instant regret.
You're like instant regret. What did I do? And then
but we apologize a lot in our house.
We do too.
So like, and
so do we.
Matt picked it up like just with girls in particular, like we are so mindful of like, okay, like you might like lose your rag like a little bit, but you instantly apologize so they know that like it wasn't okay. But the best one is like when your kid is like, stop yelling, and you're like, I'm not yelling, and you're both like,
you're yelling.
Well, you can't tell that you're yelling, but you're getting like,
So let me ask you guys this: so when have you ever, or how do you justify using it to your wife?
Towards my wife?
No. Like usually the scenario is, right, I come down too hard. My wife looks at me and she's like, Matt, come on. You're dealing with little girls here. And so at that point I can either say, you're right, I'm sorry. But depending on where I'm at emotionally, I might try to justify it. So that's why I want to know.
Really glad you brought that up because I was thinking of it like from that standpoint. And we're in a unique situation of only having girls.
Right. Yeah.
My wife's go-to is always like, do you want their future husband talking to them like that?
Oh, man.
That was something I was going to bring up because go ahead, finish.
No, that's all I have because I have no rebuttal to that.
I have a 15-year-old daughter now.
Yeah.
And we do spank in our household. We don't do it very often, but we do. I have never, ever, ever done anything, no harsh word to my 15-year-old daughter. Like, she can do like no wrong. She knows it too, which is terrible. But every once in a while, I'll be like angry with her brothers that she's got a 13-year-old, 14-year-old brother and a 17-year-old brother. And I'll be like, and I'm angry at all three of them, and I'm doing my thing, whatever. They've been disrespectful, whatever. And she kind of gets lumped in with it, and her face goes from being like, to like just like terror. And like, I haven't like threatened anything. I've just been like angry towards her. And my wife's always like, would you ever want her future husband or boyfriend to speak to her that way? And so I'm always like, so I have to
coming back from that.
I have to apologize to her. And my boy's like, what about us? I'm like, shut up. You guys are fine. But to my daughters,
pipe down, loser.
Yeah. I've said before, I've said, look, life is hard. Like, not everyone's going to talk nice to them all the time. Like, they're going to encounter people.
Bet that goes down really well.
Yeah. And it's the same look.
Yeah.
And it's the same. It's like, really?
Yeah. And, the number one person that's supposed to be their number one fan.
Yeah.
That they're going to look as like their future husbands and be like, okay, I want that to emulate this guy who supposedly protects me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody dates my daughters and they yell at them, I'll kill them.
Yeah.
Just flat out.
Just so people know.
Let's go on the record.
She's been warned.
What about mum tone versus dad tone? How would you qualify like mum tone in your house? Because my wife stays at home. She's incredibly patient, incredibly kind to the kids. Like, she does just a phenomenal job of like talking them off that ledge, when like toddler tantrums are about to start, and whatever else. And I find, part of where like the frustration sometimes about dad tone comes in is I'll come in and undo all of her hard work. So imagine like a day where like, it's been a tough day with the kids, and we'll be texting back and forth when I'm on my way back from work, and she'll be like, just to brace you, like they're kind of acting up. And then I'll come into an absolute like hurricane scene where the kids are running amok, and instantly you go into like dad voice, hey, get away from there and get down and all that kind of stuff. And just my wife will be like, you've just undone all the work that I've been doing all day. So then
you add stress to her a lot of times.
Yeah. But what about like your guys' household? What does mom tone look like?
She's just got a lot longer like runway until she gets.
Why is that? Why do moms have a longer runway? Because they're dealing with the same thing.
But I think it kind of goes back to the discussion we had a few weeks ago about the solution-oriented mindset. We're just like, hey, I expect to say something and that thing to be followed immediately, as opposed to a mom who is much more, at least my wife, I think a lot of our wives have this similarity in the sense of like, it's consensus building. They're like, if all day long, my wife's like, if all day long, all I did was yell at my kids about the things they shouldn't do, it would be the worst existence for everyone, because I would constantly be yelling at them, because kids are constantly doing things that need correction.
I know.
Yeah.
So I can't do what you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, our kids would like hate their lives. It'd be terrible. So I have to figure out ways to make them, do the things that need to be done without it being me yelling at them. And my wife is much better at saying like, okay, you guys are acting up. It's chore time, or you got to run around the house 4 times. Like, we literally will make our kids do laps around the house, like outside.
Nice.
Just because we're like, listen, you're doing this thing that we've said not to do. Everyone's doing laps to get all your jitters out or whatever. So we make
you're training athletes over
I
there.
know, I like that, man. Yeah.
Push up. We do push-ups. We do not burpees yet. They're not all coordinated.
Get that weight vest over there. You're gonna go do 40 pull-ups.
But we do like we will do stuff like that just in lieu of any sort of like physical punishment, which we it's always a mixed bag, right? If you do that or don't. We do a lot of those type of things. Like, all right, run around the house 4 times.
Yeah. So I know that's a great dad hack. It's like when kids are just at their limit, you're at your limit, somehow like changing the environment.
Oh yeah.
Like from inside to outside, or from quiet to loud, or whatever, loud to quiet, is a great way to just like
As
reset
Arnold
them.
would say, you got to shock the system.
Come on, get outside now.
Got to shock the muscle.
What accent was that? I'm trying to.
That's Arnold, baby.
Austrian.
That's all.
Pure
That's
Austrian.
all Austrian. You got to shock the muscle.
That was a bit better.
Must be very
I'll take
proud of
that.
yourself.
I'll take that. Well, you know what's interesting? So over 70% of couples admit to having a recurring argument about how one of them talks to the kids. And it's typically about not what they say, but how they say it.
Yeah.
And 67% of mums say that they then have to soften their tone when talking to the kids after their partner has taken the lead, which probably comes to some of the stuff that we've been saying around like why mums are a lot more patient, is because we've just ruined it.
Have you guys ever, sorry to cut you off, but have you guys ever read the book Never Split the Difference? Chris
I know
Voss.
it, but I've not.
He was a hostage negotiator for years for the FBI, and now he's doing business stuff. But he talks about the late night DJ voice, and how just going into this very low late night DJ voice just totally changes someone's psychology when you're talking to them in stressful situations. So I've tried to use that a few times and remember that, like, go to this low late night DJ voice. Dad's looking like, Dad, are you on the radio?
You okay? Dad having a stroke over there?
Why are you so quiet?
Have you ever done that where you just talk super quiet? Like it'll be going
crazy. I've seen
crazy.
that used, and it's, can anyone hear me?
So I do it all the time at nighttime. Like so we have we have 3 boys in a room and 3 girls in a room and whatever. And so kind of putting to bed gets hectic pretty much every single night. And sometimes I'll sit down. If it's like I can't control, I'll just start talking like real quiet. So like if this is my normal voice, I'll just drop it down and be like, all right, so, and I'll talk super, super quiet. And they'll be like, what is Dad doing over there? And slowly but surely they have to quiet down because they can't hear me. And so like I'll lower, or like if I'm reading a story and they're getting like rambunctious, I'll just drop it to where it's like super, super quiet. Sometimes it works. Other times they're just like, I don't know, Dad, stop reading or something. But anyway, Dad,
good.
You know,
Well,
changing the volume of your voice can pull that.
What's funny is, again, from the same studies that I've been quoting, kids tend to follow instructions more quickly when delivered in a lower pitched voice, retain the lesson longer when it's delivered calmly. And there is a direct correlation between, if you think of like CEOs, CFOs, and those kind of in that like C-suite, it's the same thing. Like slower pace and lower pitch is perceived as more authoritative in work environments. So I think it kind of translates to translates to dad tone as well. What do you do when you kind of are trying to find that balance between like firm versus like frightening? Because you referenced obviously like your daughter and stuff like that. Like any dad hacks for when you find like yourself like spiraling down, like whatever, like something's happened. And, like what you spoke about resetting your kids, right? Like doing the laps and burpees. Like, are you doing laps out there? Is your wife sending you out to do burpees?
Yeah,
like, what's happening?
My wife has many times been like, listen, anything you do in the next little bit here is going to be completely ineffective. So you might want to take a beat, figure out it, and go back. So what I do typically is like, if that happens, which I've gotten better over the years of this, and I think this goes in with my, you know, who I want to be as an individual and sort of my relationship with Christ and all those type of things, like kind of molding me to be a better person. You take your break, right? You take your like, okay, I'm going to take a quick break. And then what I've found is in that break time, I'll kind of craft the argument in the way that like really matters, to where it's not so much about maybe the thing that the kid did.
Right.
It's more about the disrespect that they it didn't maybe unintentionally did through their actions. And so then I'll maybe change the argument from being like, how could you be so stupid to do X, Y, and Z, to say, hey, you know what? When you do these things, it's extremely disrespectful to me or to your mother, and shows a bad example to X, Y. That sort of argument, where it allows me to kind of craft a better argument. So I think that my wife is a big proponent of this, of like, hey, if you can't do this with like, if you can't add value in a creative and constructive way, go take a minute, come back. You're not any less impactful or a lion or whatever it is of the family that you want to be. Take a beat, come back, and actually add value. And so
Isn't that funny too? Because it typically is a you problem. Like it's us. It's just like
it's
what's going on.
It's a you
in
problem, and it's got nothing to do with what the kids are doing. Like you'll be frustrated about something else. And it's just like they'll do something that'll just be like the one thing that like broke like this, like whatever the phrase is, straw, camel's back, whatever. Do you practice like tone awareness? Like, are you, aside from like your wife calling you out on it, or aside from like your wife calling you out on it, like, are you aware of your tone, and do you practice? Like, do you find yourself like in a moment going, wait a second, and you've got like a go-to that calms you down, or no? I
think over time I've gotten more aware of it. So it like Andrew said, it's become better with more kids. And then again, with all girls, they're very sensitive to your tone. Yeah. So it still comes out, absolutely. But I think hopefully I'm quicker to realize. Yeah. And then to your point, if apology is needed, like going to grab my kid, like I happened this morning, actually. So going to grab my kid.
Wondering why he was so pent up anger this morning.
Yeah, it happened this morning. So I grabbed my kid. I took her to one of the other rooms. It was just me and her. Yeah. And I just had a quick little talk with her. You know what I mean?
My wife has a dog whistle that she just, when I can only hear it.
Back down, back off. That's great.
That's funny. What about, and I've kind of used this a couple of times in our house, like, I don't know if you've ever done this with your kids. We try and do resetting like together. Have you ever guys done smell the flowers, blow the candles?
No. What is this?
So like it's like, you know how like
Like a breathing technique?
like a
I'm
breathing
assuming?
technique.
Okay.
So like, you know how like with adults and you know, you look at like Gary Brecker and Huberman and
Yeah.
people like that, and they'll teach you about like breathing, and you've got like box breathing for before you're about to do like a big presentation. It's supposed to calm you and ground you. The kids' version of like a box breathing or, you know, a calming grounding technique is, and I won't do it into the mic because I feel like it'll turn into ASMR again.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's just like, so you kind of imagine like smelling the flowers. So you kind of have your hand out and you have your kid sort of smell and take a huge inhale. Then they hold their breath. And then you say, okay, now it's birthday candles. And they do a huge exhale and do the birthday candles.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm yet to see it work. So
we haven't done any sort of breathing technique with our kids, but we'll do timeouts most
I was about to ask that actually.
Yeah.
So like so pivoting from like just your dad tone, and when that fails, what else? Like when the dad tone fails, and whether it's a yelling or a harsh tone or whatever you want to call it, and your wife has corrected you, what's your go-to then? Because I've tried timeouts, I've tried the stares, I've tried all of it, and it just doesn't work.
In my opinion, it's consistency. Like when a kid knows, okay, I'm gonna have to sit in timeout till I'm done crying or done doing the thing I'm doing, or I apologize, and they're going to sit there, whether it's 2 minutes, 2 hour, or 20 minutes, 2 hour, whatever it is. And you know, the thing we always do is we'll put them there, and it feels like an eternity to them, but it's really like 4 or 5 minutes. We go there and we basically reiterate the thing and be like, hey, you can't do X, Y, and Z because of this.
Yeah.
You need to apologize. And if they're not ready to do that yet, we go, okay, we'll walk away. And I'm not talking about like, this isn't, we're not throwing them in a closet and closing the door. This is like
Matilda
you know,
style.
this is like,
Chain
go,
to the
go,
crawl space and
this is
choke
like
you or
go sit
whatever.
on the stairs, or go sit, go sit in the, in the hallway here until whatever. And so that's kind of how we will reorient maybe a child in the midst of their own sort of like tone issue, right? If you think about it that way, it's kind of their own response to the tone. But what's interesting is most of my kids the kids that don't have the tone rarely give tone back. So I would say, it kind of goes back to the very beginning of this in the sense of like the ones that the kids that maybe haven't experienced the same level of like dad tone don't have the same response of dad tone kind of in return. That's how
When do you feel like you can start reasoning with your kids? Like what age? Mine are too young for that right now. But when did you feel like?
I don't know. I think the age of reasoning is kind of that like maybe 6, 7, 8 range where they start understanding. Like the moment they can start manipulating you is, I think, the age that you should start thinking about reasoning. Like if they know, oh, if I do this thing, and the reason why I do this thing is to get this thing, then you have to start being able to, maybe it's not like actually like sit down and have a reasoned debate with them, because they might not be able to think, abstractly like that, but more along the lines of being able to say like, okay, the moment, like we all as humans are it's easy for us to use manipulation. It's kind of like, for whatever reason, it's been born into us. We know how to manipulate from a very young age. Kids know how to do it. Toddlers know how to do it. And so, correcting that sort of action is at too young of an age is never going to be, I think, you're never going to reap the rewards you want from it. But I think right around that 6, 7, 8 years of age is where they can start reasoning and drawing those like mental jumps to be like, oh, okay, I understand why this activity or this action was bad.
Yeah, I agree with that too. With my 2 older kids, that are 7 and 9, it's you can use it.
Do you guys loop in like your older kids to kind of help with the younger kids from maybe tone's maybe the wrong like phrase, but like from a discipline standpoint? Do you ever find yourselves like saying like, well, so and so does this and so does that? Because I find it very difficult. Like I make a conscious effort not to do that, because like growing up, and maybe it's kind of thinking about like dad tone, like that our version of dad tone was always like, because we're 2 boys and 2 girls growing up. Me and my brother were just very rambunctious, and the 2 girls were super well behaved. Yeah. And girls, I think, are inherently more well behaved than boys, and so it was always like, well, look at your sisters. Why can't you be like your sisters? And so that was our version of like
that's a dad tone. I mean, that's
But I like that's a pretty surefire way of like having like kids become resentful.
Yeah,
over
that's
stuff.
that's not something we do.
Yeah,
at all.
likewise. So I guess like back to my one of my original points around like what are you like overtly aware of? Like I think from an awareness standpoint, making sure you're not comparing your kids when you're telling off one kid versus another makes a
it's interesting though that
huge
that's
difference.
That's your version of like dad tone.
Yeah.
Or my dad was a yeller.
Yeah.
Like it was just like the moment he walked in the door, you knew Dad was home.
FYI, your dad's still a yeller.
He's still yelling. Like that's his, but it's funny because that's almost like he has got such a gruff love language as well.
Yeah.
It's like, you could call my dad at any time. Like even you guys, you guys literally, if you called my dad at 2 a.m. and we're like, hey, I'm in a jam. He's like, all right.
Yeah.
How big of a gun do I need to bring?
Yeah.
That's literally like what he would think of.
Yeah.
And so he's always that guy, but it's very, very gruff. Whereas like, to your point with your dad, the comparison is sort of that same maybe level of issue.
Yeah.
Whereas we never.
Yeah, my
never
dad
being
was.
compared
I
to
think
my
actually
kids.
the more I think about
sisters.
this, my dad was more of like a, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Kind of
I
dad.
could
That's the
see
classic
that.
line.
Like it's a classic line.
That's
Like,
worse than just being
it
mad.
is worse.
That's like a mom tone. Disappointment is more of like, I think, a mom tone. Like my mom, she'd get angry or whatever, but when your mom is disappointed, you're just like, oh man,
Like I gotta change my life.
I just exactly.
I gotta stop selling like sweets on the streets now.
Yeah, it's funny because we talk about the love language a little bit there, and talk about inheriting different things from your family. I feel like my dad's family, their love language is being mean to each other. Like they get together
That's
and
my wife's family.
they just pick on each other the whole time. They just rib each other constantly, and it's like, but there's that, if you don't know where it's coming from a good place, that it's so easily
I
to
kind of love
translate.
it though. Like my wife's side of the family is the same way. Like everyone's constantly like picking on each other. You have to say one thing like weird, and for the next 8 years, that's how they're gonna say it. Like, and it's
Pasta. I don't know how you say it.
it's not pasta,
Pasta.
Oh, that's great.
I have so many of them. I feel like we should do an episode of like words that my family makes fun of me for saying. Let's pivot into the listener question. So the question for this week is, how do you teach your kids about tone without sounding like a hypocrite?
It's a good question. I'm not sure there's any one specific way outside of, I think you guys touched on a lot of apologies. Because it's not so much like, can you do it without ever getting angry or mad or yelling?
Yeah.
I'm sure you can, but the reality is it's probably not. It'd be, in my opinion, the best way would be, how can you apologize quickly?
Sure.
And not apologize in a way that makes it feel like
insincere.
or like you're wrong for being upset. Like that's the big thing. It's
Right.
like you have a right as a parent to be upset in a lot of situations. So not apologizing for maybe being upset, but apologizing for the way in which you responded when you were upset.
Yeah.
Because I think that's more of the issue.
That's a fine line though, because like some of my apologies sometimes come out like insincere. My wife will like call me out on it.
Yeah, when you're like, I'm sorry, you're being an idiot. Not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry you're being an idiot.
Sorry,
Is
you
right
didn't
up
like
there. Or I'm sorry, like you took it to me. ... And you're like, that's not an apology. That's...
No,
What about you?
Just to add on to keep going with what Andrew's saying, I think that teaching your kid that it's okay to get upset, but then teaching them how do you respond to being upset. And again, we all make mistakes. Like none of us can just hold it all in. So it's like it's gonna come out at some point. So if you can learn, and I think in life, right, if they can learn to even recognize in us when looks like dad's getting mad. And that's a skill, right? Recognize that. Now, maybe I should change my tone. Maybe I should change my behavior. If we can teach our kids to recognize that in us and figure out like, hey, there's something I'm doing that's causing this response. And again, I know it's a deep level thing for a kid to get, but I mean, if you start early enough, like trying to get your kids prepared for the world, right? That gives you, think about that in the workplace. Think about that anywhere you go. You can read people a little bit and start reading people, even from starting at the home. I just think that's a skill, and we haven't by any means mastered that. But it's like a skill that I think any dad would be happy this kid had once they leave the house.
Yeah. I also feel like it's tougher like with girls too, because for girls and you kind of try and draw like the parallels between like corporate life or like whatever, like any kind of like work life versus familial life, is from a tone standpoint, you want your girls to be like assertive, but then you're then dealing with like an assertive like kid. And so like the running joke is always like, I hope like my daughter's like personality means like she's going to run like a, Fortune 500 company and not like a prison gang or like something like that.
But personality does have a lot to do with it.
Personality has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Like
Some kids you have to rein them in because they're just walking around like I'm the boss.
Yeah.
I'm looking around seeing who I can control or manipulate or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like it's different.
Yeah,
with
I
those
think
kids.
something that you touched on is like, and I don't know if you meant to like kind of like make it as impactful around like life is hard and things are tough and blah blah blah. I do agree with that. Like I think people are going to yell at you at some point in your life, and you're going to have to be able to stand your ground. And I think as long as you can understand that, like, whether it's, yelling or something that comes across sort of unkind, is as long as you can model like a sincere apology, they'll know what to expect like in the future from someone else. Yeah. One thing that we didn't sort of touch on, I'm actually curious to get like your guys' perspective on before we jump into dad interests, is have you ever found both ways, whether it's your leadership style at work or bringing that back like into like your home life, do you feel like your work personality ever crosses over with your dad personality when it comes to discipline?
Rarely. My wife was in the office, it was maybe about 2 years ago or something like that. And you guys, I've said like I yell at home, and she said something about me getting angry about something at work. And one of the guys he's worked for me for like a decade, she's like, yeah, he's a yeller. And they literally were like completely perplexed. They're like, what? They're like, he doesn't really yell. She's like, what? How do you not yell at work? He gets home and he's he gets angry so easily.
Gets it all at home.
And I'm like, I'm not a yeller. She's like, you have to be a yeller at work. So then she went around like 3 or 4 other people that, we're close to because we've worked together. So pulling them like, does Andrew ever yell at the office? They're like, no, Andrew's not a yeller. So it's like, I do have a little bit of Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah. He runs around whistling and skipping and singing songs.
In the sense of like, and I think it's more because it's, it's measured. It's like, and maybe this is a weird way to think about it, but like when you go to work, it's like everybody's opting in the sense of like, if I'm going to yell at you, I probably like, there's very few times I'm going to want to continue to work with that person if I'm always yelling at that person.
Yeah. Right.
But with a kid, you don't really have a choice. It's like, you're going to be your kid forever.
They are, but I think you also inherently love your kid more, want the best for them more. And so like, often, like when you are yelling, or I feel like we keep saying yelling. I don't mean yelling.
I don't mean yelling.
Yeah,
either.
I mean like a firm tone,
very direct
tone.
tone.
Yeah, a direct tone.
No
exactly.
messing around.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's So when we say yelling, I mean dad tone. But from a dad tone perspective, and I think you touched on it, you feel like you're nitpicking at so many different things, and a large part of why you're nitpicking is you truly want the absolute best for them. You want them to be able to like dominate any environment, kind of be able to like hold their own, know what's right, know what's wrong. And with a coworker, sometimes you have this thing where the opinion they're giving is wrong, something they're doing is wrong, and you're just like, I just don't care. Like I don't care what that impact is, like future state. So I was just curious to see like how you guys ever sort of straddle.
And work's a public place, I would say. Work is a public place, so you're dealing with a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. And when you're home, that's your domain. So I just feel like you have more freedom to be like, to your point. I'm helping. I want to help shape and mold and teach, right? It's our jobs as dads. So we're going to be more vocal, speak up.
I'm also not the boss at home. Like my wife runs like the house. Like
it's funny you've mentioned a lot of things about like raising daughters. I think sons though, I think it's good for a son to feel like a certain level of friction. Like I think it helps take a boy or a young man and then turn them into someone who can like withstand the withstand the pressures of the world. Yeah. Right. Because like you've always, if you've been on road trips in the US or whatever, like you've always had to stop at that one gas station at that one weird time. And you've had to be like, all right, this is a little dicey. I'm in an area that I do not feel comfortable in. Yeah. And I have to be able to like feel confident and also feel like that if somebody was to maybe make an aggressive action towards me, maybe not physical, but just like a whatever, that I'm not going to be kind of off-putting. It's not going to like put me off by it. And so I think there is something good for at least a young man who is eventually going to want to be the protector of his family one day and all things, to like experience a little bit of like friction in their life. So like my boys get a very, very different discussion in terms of like how I go about things. Now, I never would condone name calling, and that's sometimes I'll say something that I have to apologize.
Yeah.
But in terms of tone with my boys, it is so entirely different the way I talk to my boys. It is so direct. Like, there is no room for discussion. It's not about feelings. It's about, reality versus not reality, those type of things. And I think it's important as a father of young boys who eventually you want to be good providers, good protectors, and all the things that you want them to be. It has to be more factual, maybe less feelings based. Ultimately, yes, you care about their feelings, you care about the whole person, but it's very. I think it's a very different challenge than just raising daughters, because you want them to have the same like, I guess like the holistic feeling of like being emotionally supported. But at the same time, you want them to feel a little bit of grit. Like, sometimes people are just not going to like you and they're going to yell at you, and you just got to be okay with it. So,
The only comment I'd make is, Hurst boys, if you need a place to stay, Uncle Naveed and Uncle Matt.
Blink twice if you're not safe. It's like when you go to the doctor and like they're like, they're like, do you feel safe at home? And I'm looking at my daughters. I'm like, yeah, they feel safe at home. Then my boys like, you feel safe at home? I'm like, you better feel safe. He feels safe, Doc. He doesn't have any words.
Hands on both shoulders. Let's jump to dad interests. Anyone been watching the Knicks Pacers series?
I've been watching highlights.
Yeah.
once the Cavs were eliminated, it was kind of like, I don't really care.
Yeah, I
too much.
boycotted it once the Cavs lost.
Boycotted it.
I'm out. I'm out.
I've got like a soft spot for the Knicks, obviously. Having lived in New York. But have you guys been following the whole Tyrese Halliburton and his dad's storyline?
A little bit vaguely. Fill me in on it though.
So the Pacers, they were playing the Bucks, I think, in the series before. And Tyrese's dad got into like a confrontation with Giannis, obviously.
Oh yeah, I did see that. I saw that headline.
And it's just really interesting. Like I think the topic about like dad tone, and it came off like very aggressive. And I think he got I think it was a 9-game ban or something like that. But yesterday was the first game that his dad was like allowed back into the stadium.
Okay.
And his son Tyrese went off yesterday. Like,
there you go.
Triple-double, 0 turnovers, led the Pacers to like a huge win. And obviously, like, I wanted like the Knicks to win, but they like interviewed him after, and they were like, like, what was like your inspiration behind it or whatever else? And he's like, my pops is like back in the building, and it was like really.
He just didn't want to get yelled at by his dad after the game. I better ball out.
we should have asked Tyrese about dad tone, but I just thought it was like a really cool like dad moment where. He'd had a really poor game, like the game before, and he came out and he owned it. And he was like, what was the reason behind the performance? It was just like, I was really poor. I let the team down, and my pops was back. So it was a big, big thing. So that was like a nice feel-good dad
Real
moment.
quick, off that.
Yeah.
We all played sports growing up.
Yeah.
How did your dad respond when you had a bad performance? Especially for like you wrestled.
Yeah.
So when you wrestle, there's no hiding behind a bad performance.
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
like, oh yeah, we had a bad pitcher, or oh yeah, their goalie wasn't very good. Wrestling is the most like I've never wrestled, but I have 2 boys now wrestling, and it is, as a dad, when your son wins a wrestling match, there's something primal that you are just so pumped for him. But at the same time, when he loses, you feel so bad for them. So I'm just on the topic of like dads in sports, like what was your experience with your dad?
I mean, I didn't lose, so I didn't really. Just
Cut.
kidding.
We're done.
That is not true. That is not true at all. It literally goes back to the story of the NBA. Like, when your dad is there, you just feel like I want to make him proud. I want to like put forth the best. My dad was supportive, win or lose.
Sure.
He was great. I mean, in that sense, I mean, he came to a lot of our sporting events. And so, there wasn't usually a ton of pep talks or anything afterward. It was just kind of like on to the next, on to the next one. But
I'm the complete opposite. Like I live vicariously through my kids. Like, I love all their sporting events, and I'll work with them in whatever way I can, even if it's like, spar, whatever I can do for my kids to work with them. And I get so jacked up, but at the same time, like, I'm not a dad who's like, I'm not going to be yelling at
the
my
refs.
kid. I could, well, first, I'm not going to yell at refs. I'm not going to, yell at my kids if they lose. Or like, it's still a game to me, but it is like, it's so much fun when my kid, wins. And I love also being able to be like, hey man, you still wrestled good, like, or
Yeah.
you still
Yeah.
did this,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
don't. This is such a small thing in the grand scheme of things. You can't be upset. We had my one son had like lost their championship, like undefeated season,
Yeah.
lose their championship football game, and he comes off the field, a couple kids are crying, and my son like sees him like, oh, I guess it's okay to cry, and he starts like crying a little bit. I'm like, listen, like it's fine to feel emotion, but there is no reason to be crying over this in the sense that like you don't need, or at least you don't need to continue to cry. Like get out, get it out. It's over. It's done with, and you move on with life because it doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things, as opposed to longer term. So how about your dad? Your dad, the complete opposite. It's okay, Naveed.
How long do we have? No, my dad came to every sporting event, practice and like actual games. No pep talks, not much after, but it was similar to actually his dad tone as it related to my siblings, and whether this was intentional or not, but it did work for me. Is even if I played cricket and scored X amount of runs, he'd always like reference someone who maybe like scored more. Like, so and so scored whatever. I'd be like, and so like that was kind of like the
motivation.
The motivation
I gotcha.
for me as well. But I'm actually overtly trying not to do that, like with my children. And I don't know if I shared this on an episode or not. My daughter recently did a gymnastics thing, and she like got like a medal after. And once they start putting that correlation between performance and reward, it's pretty cool to see. And this is for another episode because we'll go off tangent, but I just feel like participation trophies in this country is a crocker whatever. Like
I would agree with you.
1, 2, and maybe 3 we can celebrate,
for sure.
but like nobody should be getting like participation trophies for like turning up. Like what, you got out of bed and like you all get like a trophy saying well done. So anyway, that's enough about that. We're about to go off a complete
next episode
tangent there. That was a fun one. Why don't you take us home, Matt?
Yeah, listen, if you're a new dad, if you're an old dad, if you're interested in learning what it's like to be a dad, this is the spot for you. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and honestly, we'd love to hear from you guys. We've been getting some comments on our YouTube videos as well. You guys can find us on there and leave comments. You can also leave comments on the podcast. We'd love if you guys would subscribe to us, follow us. We got new podcasts dropping every week, so we appreciate you guys listening.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.